You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
A city council voted no on affordable housing. Shame on them. They voted no on affordable housing plan after Dave Chappelle, among those against it, threatened to pull business. Dave Chappelle pulling the ultimate, not in my backyard. We're going to talk about this. This is an interesting one. This involves famous comedian. Some say he's the GOAT of all comedians, greatest of all time. We've got land development. We've got new construction. We've got housing going in, that single family versus the affordable. And this is why we have an affordable problem in the United States. There's no real incentive to build it unless you've got massive subsidies. And whenever that happens, things always tend to go a little sideways. If you build a bunch of new construction that is dedicated for low-income housing, you don't want it necessarily right next to you, the rest of your single-family homes, because it's just not the influence that people want to see. Rental properties don't get taken care of the way that owner-occupied single-family homes do. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to admit it. We're going to check this storyline out. It's a good one. I think you'll enjoy it. Before we do, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies here just outside of Seattle, Washington in Bellevue. And I read the news from that perspective. All right, let's get into it. Dave Chappelle. I love Dave Chappelle because he can say stuff. He's about my age, and he can say stuff because he's a black dude that he can get away with for the most part, right? Remember, I bet you he was pretty excited when Joe Rogan started to get harped on by Spotify, because that took the pressure off Dave Chappelle. Remember, everybody was like wanting to cancel Dave Chappelle at one time, including the employees of Spotify. They were all worked up about some stuff he said about transgender. And so he's probably like, hey, Joe Rogan, thanks for taking the heat off me. Joe Rogan has just been put through the grinder. So we've got a housing development in Yellow Springs, Ohio. It will not include affordable housing in it after Dave Chappelle and other residents voiced concerns. Per the Dayton Daily News, the Yellow Springs Council voted no on including an affordable housing component in the planned development. Oberer Homes, the company set to construct the development, made a plan with the village to include duplexes and other affordable housing alongside family homes in a 53-acre area south of Yellow Springs. After multiple complaints, the village and Dave Chappelle pulling up to the microphone, and we're going to watch that video in a second here. And for those of you on the audio, I will describe what's going on. It's pretty funny. My name's Dave Chappelle. He just basically lays into him. After multiple complaints, the village council voted 2-2 on the planned unit development zoning. That means there won't be affordable housing included, and it will be a development of 143 single-family homes only. So unless projects are absolutely incredibly massive, it's really hard to have your single-family component, which is single-family homes sold to individuals who are going to live in them, take care of them, and then have another portion of the community, like half of the community, be rental housing, right? Because the rental housing, it typically has a lower standard of care. Even if you are a great landlord and you really take care of your properties, the wear and tear on a home or a duplex or a triplex, whatever it is, the wear and tear of having tenants come in and out. And if you don't have an ownership interest in a property, oftentimes you don't take care of that property. It's a rental. How many times have you heard that? I mean, I've said that lots of times because it's funny. It's a rental. Just rip that out, you know. And so people talk about, they talk a huge game about having affordable housing within their community. But when it comes right down to it, if it's in their development, yeah, they don't want it. It's another example of not in my backyard. Now, this development, Dave Chappelle was going to be doing a number of businesses within the community. And so he's got a pretty good sized stake in this community. So Oberer Homes, the company set to construct the development, made a plan with the village to include the duplexes and other units. After multiple complaints, the village council voted 2-2. And so it'd be a development of 143 single family homes. So Chappelle expressed opposition to the project and threatened to pull his businesses from the local area, including his plans for a restaurant and a comedy club. I am not bluffing, said Chappelle. I will take it off the table. I will take it all off the table. Let's listen to what Dave has to say. This is at a city council meeting, right? Okay, so here is Chappelle's moment at the mic. This is a Twitter video.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Dave Chappelle. I just want to say, and Marianne, I can talk to you about this privately. I don't know why the village council would be afraid of litigation from a $24 million a year company while they X out a $65 million a year company. I cannot believe you would make me audition for you. You look like clowns. I am not bluffing. I will take it all off the table. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
That is 46 seconds of Dave Chappelle at his finest. I don't know if you could hear that. If you couldn't hear that, but I'll tell you what he was saying. But he's basically up at a podium, got a mic. He's got, I don't know, is there 20 people in the audience? And in front of him, he's got the city, probably the president of the city council. I don't know. But he walks up, hey, I'm Dave Chappelle. I'm not sure why you're talking about a lawsuit from a $24 million company. And I believe he is talking about Oberer. That is the development company, the company that's proposing to do this development. And now they're going to cut a deal to put in some, low income housing, some duplexes, that type of thing. And so Dave is saying, hey, you got this $24 million company, but you should be worried about my $65 million company. That, I believe, is the gist of what he was saying. And he basically said, yeah, I can't believe you're bringing me down here, meaning I can't believe the subject matter that we are talking about, that I had to come down here and talk into this mic. He's kind of joking, but he was pissed. He's like, yeah, I'm going to pull all of my proposed developments entirely from the table. And this city, it's not a huge city. And, what Dave Chappelle is talking about investing is probably a sizable investment for the community. And so the community is like, if Chappelle pulls his money, that's not good. So why don't we just build 143 single family residential homes and we'll just call it good. That's literally what they did. All right. Let's see what else we've got here. Other Yellow Spring citizens said that they were concerned about how the development might impact traffic and water management. Yeah, actually, they just didn't like the idea of having duplexes and low-income family or affordable housing in their community, right? Resident Matthew Kirk said he was on board initially, but he eventually soured on the project because he sees it as two separate developments rather than just the one. You've got the owner-occupied single-family development. You've got the multifamily duplexes, affordable housing, right? And what happens to the owner-occupied single-family homes? What happens to their value over time as the multifamily isn't taken care of, or just, over years, 10 years later, 20 years later? Do you know what a multifamily development looks like typically after 20 years? Yeah, it's not great. It gets a little remodel. You get a little lipstick on the pig when you go to sell that project. I mean, that's just how it goes. But people don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about, well, there might be an impact to traffic. How many more extra people are you talking? Not that many. 143 unit development total. Okay. Take half of that, 70, and you make them into duplex. Okay. So you're going to have a few more people. It's not that. It's the not in my backyard. And Dave Chappelle is basically saying the same thing. So this is the overriding thing of why we oftentimes don't have affordable housing and we don't build it, because there's no incentive to. You're not going to make more money building cheaper product. You're not going to oftentimes make more money if you've got zoning that allows you to basically just build duplexes, triplexes, or whatever, when you can make more money selling single family owner occupied to a single family owner occupied market. Now you might have investors that buy a handful of the homes for rental properties. Okay. But the whole thing isn't just dedicated to affordable housing. So that's why in a capitalist society, we have such a tough time with affordable housing because there's no real incentive to do it. Rent controls, we all know how that works out. It doesn't, just becomes a train wreck after a while. And so you've got this really tough situation. And Dave Chappelle just basically came right out and said, yeah, not going to tolerate that. Give me back the 143, single family units you were planning on building. And then that's what happens. He just kind of walks off. So yeah, Dave Chappelle, it's funny. This is the first I've kind of heard from him in a little bit. He did a little bit of a hunker down, and this article was written February 9th. So he did a little bit of a hunker down after that whole Spotify thing, as Joe Rogan will probably do. But Chappelle, he kind of just does his own thing, right? He is almost not cancelable, if that's a word. Can't cancel him. During that same meeting, Chappelle said the average age in Yellow Springs is 49, and since there's no school in the area, it would be difficult to attract young families. The changes are inevitable, but we do have a decision on what they will or could be, he said. Other properties Chappelle owns in the area include an old schoolhouse he plans to renovate for the local National Public Radio affiliate WYSO. And he was also going to do, I think, a comedy club and a restaurant, I believe. So pretty sizable development, pretty sizable investment in the community. And he basically said, yeah, I'm not down with that. And guess what? Most of the rest of the community probably wasn't either. It's so much easier if you just have a residential community dedicated to owner-occupied properties, because that brings the highest level of appreciation to the marketplace. You don't have a segment of the area that kind of becomes run down and kind of becomes, the other half. Nobody wants to talk about that. Why is that? Well, because it's kind of awkward. You need to have a place where people can afford, but who's going to build it? That's the age-old question, right? And increasing your density, we've got lots of conversations going on just across the United States. Well, take all your single family and just increase the density. And that's really going to alleviate the housing shortage problem, because we have a massive housing shortage problem. I looked at all the active listings in the Seattle area the other day. I mean, it's literally close to sold out all the time. I know I've harped on that, but this whole concept is of not wanting that in your backyard is kind of how we got here. It's, you build something to the highest and best use. If the city tells you, if the city mandates, well, you got to do a little bit of this. Even in the city of Seattle, as far as building affordable units, oftentimes developers, they will pay into some kind of fund, affordable housing fund, versus actually build the units, because it's not profitable to build affordable housing units. It's just not. And you look at a company like Habitat for Humanity, nonprofit like Habitat for Humanity, they can only build so many homes at a time. And it's very few relative to the greater demand that's out there. So even if you took all the lots that are in the United States right now and started building duplexes and triplexes, and a lot of these, they're not going to be rental properties. They're going to be sold, because that's what it's going to take to entice developers, entice those owners to sell. And, it goes to the highest bidder, right? It goes to the highest bidder. This is nothing new. And so when that happens and that property gets developed, it's going to get sold to the highest bidder. And guess who can afford new construction in most of these upper end markets that are lacking, massive amounts of housing? Yeah, people with money, the same people who already own the property and the same people that can afford it right now today in today's market, when everything's over $1 million in a lot of these cities. So where's your affordable housing? Just dumping a bunch of units on the market, that doesn't really do anything. That's kind of my bottom line. All right, that's it for me on this one. But Dave Chappelle just basically saying, yeah, I don't think so. and the town council going, oh, if Dave says he's going to pull out. And there's probably a bunch of other factors. There's probably a bunch of other people in the community. But this is the age-old discussion, isn't it? Not in my backyard. Well, where do we put it? I don't know. Not in my backyard. That's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. Dave Chappelle. He's funny. Catch up soon. Bye for now.